So it's no doubt what is the game of the weekend when it comes to Christmas Day. It is Boston versus Milwaukee. As there's no definitive team in the Western Conference, you look towards the Eastern Conference, and these two teams look like the NBA Finals favorites. Vegas would back that up at this point. Boston, Milwaukee, both coming into the season, starting off strong. Both have struggled a little bit in recent weeks. Took in a couple more losses against teams that they really shouldn't have or shouldn't feel good about taking losses to. Boston just lost a back-to-back as we record this to the Orlando Magic. Jayson Tatum sat out with personal reasons. That may be something to monitor throughout the week. Don't think it's anything too serious, as Jayson Tatum and Kyrie Irving are not built the same, so I don't look at personal reasons and think anything too crazy. Assuming Jayson Tatum plays, it's a matchup of MVP candidates. Both Giannis and Tatum are averaging over 30 points a game this season. You go back to their matchup in the playoffs last year, that's going to drive a lot of excitement as there's a lot of unknown. There's a lot of question marks about that series. Khris Middleton was hurt, didn't play. How would that have changed things? If Boston didn't have some failures at the free throw line in a couple of those games, could they have put away Milwaukee much earlier than they did? Did it even have to go to 7 games? Those are the type of things we're going to try and figure out as these two teams go against each other. Milwaukee, Boston, both having excellent seasons. Kyle, who do you think is looking better this season?
Man, when I say this, let's acknowledge that it's Boston, Milwaukee, and then it's everyone else. And we've been building for this for 5 years. I mean, this isn't the best of the Milwaukee teams only because Khris Middleton has gotten older, but we have Giannis in his prime. This is now 5 years of the Tatum Brown core outside of Kyrie and Gordon Hayward, who were kind of like they were the supplemental pieces to Kyrie and Gordon Hayward. Now they are the core pieces of the team. I'm going to say Boston. And you know how much I love Giannis, and you know how much I have been a defender of Milwaukee and what they've been building over the past 6 seasons. But I think Boston is a better team than Milwaukee, and they are the two best teams far and away. They didn't change anything from last year. They're running it back with the same teams. You have Giannis in his prime, who last year almost carried them over this Boston Celtics team in the same way that on one leg, he carried Milwaukee to the NBA Finals in 2021. You have Giannis in his physical prime. You have Middleton, presumably back to health after surgery. Jrue Holiday is still one of the best defensive guards in the NBA. Grayson Allen has filled in nicely to his role. Bobby Portis is still there. Brooklyn. This is the same team that won the championship in 2021. And this is the same team that I believe, had Khris Middleton been healthy, would have won the championship in 2022. And so Milwaukee is peaking at exactly the right time, and yet Boston is better. And that's really interesting to see because both of these teams have followed incredible arcs when you think of Milwaukee lost in the conference finals to Kawhi in 2019. And Giannis got hurt in the bubble, but they were already on their way to losing against Miami. But still, you saw them lose in the conference finals in 2019. And then you saw Boston lose in the conference finals in 2020. And you saw the development and growth of both of these teams to the point where you now have the two previous Eastern Conference champions peaking at exactly the right time and headed for an epic matchup against each other, if not just on Christmas, potentially in the conference finals. And these two teams are peaking at exactly the right times to create what might be the most fun playoff series I can think of since the Warriors and Rockets in 2018. In terms of teams peaking at exactly the correct time, in terms of the talent on both teams, like not since Warriors Rockets in 2018 have I been quite as excited for a matchup as I am for this Bucks and Celtics potential Eastern Conference Finals.
I'm going to push back against something you said just a little bit. The Celtics haven't actually ran it back with the exact same team. The same core, the same top pieces when you talk about Tatum and Brown, sure, Marcus Smart, of course, at the top. But Malcolm Brogdon has been a big offseason addition for them. What he's able to do for that bench unit and driving the offense and opening up shooters. He himself, an excellent shooter this year. He's shooting 46% from 3-point range. You look down the Boston Celtics roster, Al Horford, 46%, Grant Williams, 45%, Sam Hauser, 42%, Derek White, 40%. The offense is much different for the Celtics, much freer, very Golden State Warriors-esque in how they drive and kick and get open shooters looks and hit from that at a very high clip. The fact that all these guys aren't just shooting 3-pointers, because anyone can just shoot 3-pointers and it end poorly, but shooting it again at higher than 40% clips tells you the type of explosiveness this offense brings. And the fact that I mentioned all these guys shooting over 40% from 3-point range, and I didn't even mention Jayson Tatum or Jaylen Brown, who are the two best players on this team. Brown this season, he's averaging 26 points a game. I mentioned Tatum's 30 this year. They just have so many different ways they can kill you. And the biggest weakness this year has been the defense, actually. The defense hasn't been that good for Boston, aside from the last month. The last month is where they really started to pick up something defensively. I could tell that in that Warriors matchup they had a couple weeks ago, they got a little shell shock. Maybe they're in their feelings a little bit after the West Coast road trip, and that's kind of led to them being a little bit inconsistent the last couple of weeks. Add in Robert Williams is finally back this year. That might be a big changing of continuity for them as they try and figure out rotations now. So I don't know if they're actually even necessarily peaking now, because Robert Williams getting infused back into this lineup seems to have discombobulated them a little bit. And I'm sure they'll figure it out and get it right, because Robert Williams being part of your roster is not a bad thing. It's just a new thing that you have to plan around. Like, where is the best spot to use him? Is Robert Williams even in the starting rotation, or do you use him off the bench? Is that the best way to get things going? That's kind of the questions that Joe Mazzulla now has to ask himself. As again, he's a first-year coach, and I wasn't expecting this after the Ime suspension.
So it depends on how you want to play defense, because Robert Williams is as important to what they do. He should have won Defensive Player of the Year last year. They gave it to Marcus Smart because people like the fun, scrappy guard, whatever. But Robert Williams should have won Defensive Player of the Year if he had just played enough games for people to give him the award.
That's the health was one of the big reasons. Because if he was giving his blocks and his length and everything that he brings to the court consistently throughout the year. Also, he didn't really blow up until the second half of the season, and the Celtics in general took off in the second half of last year's season. But Robert Williams, where you really started to see his effectiveness, was towards that part of the season. He didn't mention after his first game he was winded, he was gassed. So I imagine it's going to be a lot of 10 minutes off the bench, 15 minutes off the bench, slowly working him in. Similar to what we saw with Kawhi and the Clippers, just slowly working him in to make sure he's back there, because he will be important depending on matchup, because we saw in the Miami series last year, he was able to abuse Bam in the post. You know, you want to see some more stuff like that. You want someone who could be build that wall. We talked about Giannis in terms of playoff matchups. Building wall, Robert Williams has to be part of that conversation. Grant Williams does well in that spot as well. Al Horford, we've seen him have some back and forth with Giannis in the past. You know, Giannis is going to get his, and that's fine. But where I think the Celtics really win this matchup is with the ancillary pieces to Jayson Tatum, because Grayson Allen last year in the playoffs, we saw him try and guard Jaylen Brown, and it was embarrassing. We saw a lot of the wings try and take out Brown last year, and Brown was able to abuse those matchups. I think that's why, well, the Celtics are going to win this game. This is going to be my pick, you know. In fact, all this time we haven't even mentioned our picks. I'm taking the Celtics to win this game. I think after the recent bad road trip, they just need kind of bounce back, and nationally televised game. That's where I think the Celtics team shines the brightest.
Yeah, except for that time they played the Warriors a few weeks ago.
Okay. You know, it was a tough road trip.
And except for that time that they had a 15-point lead last week against the Lakers, and then basically gave that back in like 10 minutes.
But
except for those nationally televised games, the most recent ones,
you
Boston
have to just make it more dramatic. Style points.
Sure.
Chicks dig style points.
To the point about Boston, like, they don't have a great way to guard Giannis. That's the thing that's like the great like psychosis about it, is like you can have this great defense and then they play Giannis, and it's like, what does Robert Williams do well? Well, he can move from the paint to the perimeter to defend. Well, what happens when Giannis is streaking down the middle because he's taking the ball from the free throw line and Euro stepping? Like it. So maybe draw charges. Cool. Like, I dare you to take a charge on Giannis. But to the point, like, whether Robert Williams starts or doesn't is all about what kind of defense they want to play. Because offensively, their offense is best when they're doing what you're talking about, which is like facilitating through Tatum, guys getting catch and shoot situations like Derek White, like Grant Williams, incorporating Al Horford in there somewhere, even Malcolm Brogdon, who I know doesn't really play on the floor at the same time as those three names that I just mentioned, but even still, you can incorporate him in there, possibly like if Derek White's not on and he falls out of the rotation in the playoffs or whatever they end up choosing to do. Once the bench shifts down to like 8 players, whatever they end up choosing to do. But it depends what you want to do. I mean, offensively, we know that they will fall apart when they do the like ISO and Jayson Tatum doing the making shots incredibly difficult for him.
That's the worst version of the Boston Celtics.
Yeah. So ideally, if they're running that offense, they're going to lose no matter what to the Bucks, presumably. But the flip side is like, what kind of defense do you want to play? And that'll decide whether Williams is starting at center or Robert Williams is starting at center, or whether Al Horford, Grant Williams will be the combo in the middle playing against Milwaukee. I'm going to take the Celtics, but I will also, we did a lot of Celtics talk here. I'll shout out a few things about the Bucks that are different this year. Brook Lopez, who's kind of been like a familiar face for the Bucks this year, and his numbers aren't flashy. Brook Lopez is having his most efficient season since his one season with the Lakers that ended up getting him traded to... No, he left as a free agent after that. But basically, Brook Lopez this season is putting up the same efficiency numbers as Nikola Vucevic. And that's something that wasn't exactly the same before. The numbers aren't the same because Vucevic has a higher usage rate in that offense, but Brook Lopez is having one of his best offensive seasons of his career. Grayson Allen has now basically filled the DiVincenzo role that used to exist for the Bucks and what they wanted to trade for Bogdan Bogdanovic for. He had a game-winning three-pointer against the Knicks a few weeks ago, which was like, without Middleton, Grayson Allen is the guy taking the late-game shots for the Bucks, and he's hitting those late-game shots, which is super interesting. He hit the game winner against the Knicks where Giannis fouled out of that game. So like maybe they would have called an ISO play for Giannis if he were there. So those have been some interesting ancillary pieces. And then Giannis probably should win MVP again. I know Tatum is right up there as well, but like Giannis is leading the league in efficiency rating. Like he probably him or Tatum are the MVPs. If we wanted to,
if the stat lines remain relatively the same as they are today, I think it will literally come down to who has the better team record at the end. If the Celtics are the number 1 seed, I think the voters might give Jayson Tatum again is still averaging over 30 points a game. I think voters will lean towards Tatum. If the Bucks are the 1 seed and Giannis is putting up the stat line he is now, I think voters will lean towards Giannis. I think that it's probably turning into a 2-horse race between the guys. But I think if you're looking for what can separate them or what can give them the edge narrative-wise, I think it might come down to who wins the Eastern Conference, at least in the regular season, because, of course, we can't factor in postseason performance into this.
Yeah, and it's difficult to do it right now because the thing I always say, I'm lazy about this. I say whoever leads the league in player efficiency rating should be the MVP because it's the stat that most correlates to the eye test. 18 of the last 21 MVPs also led the league in efficiency rating, which used to be Giannis 3 weeks ago. I just checked again. It's Jokic right now who's leading the league in efficiency rating. So we'll see what happens
won't
there.
Do that again. I just don't think voters would go that route again. But
maybe this is one of those 4 years because the reason the 3 years it didn't happen was Westbrook. People got Steph Curry fatigue and the cool story of Westbrook getting the triple-double. 1 year was Kobe Bryant getting it because people wanted to give Kobe an MVP. And 1 year was Derrick Rose because people got LeBron fatigue. So if we do LeBron fatigue or if we do fatigue of giving it to Giannis and Jokic, Tatum's probably third on that list. We'll see if the Mavericks get a decent record and maybe they'll get in this game. But yeah, I do think that after Jokic and Giannis, it's probably Jayson Tatum right there. And if we want to do best record, best team, Celtics will probably have the best record at the end of the season. So if we're going to do best player on the best team, it would be Jayson Tatum winning the MVP. But I'm with you. I'm taking the Celtics to win.
All right, guys. We're both on the Celtics. Maybe you're with the Bucks. Let us know below in the comment section. Leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all our social medias. From Juju and Kyle. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. We will see you next time.